I am 68 years old, and my son sold my house while I was learning how to swallow water again. I found out from a stranger at my front door. She had a fabric swatch in her hand and a soft, apologetic smile. She wanted to know when she could come by to measure the windows for curtains. I was still in a wheelchair. My left hand was still curled in on itself. I asked her what windows. She said the Craftsman on Maple Street, the one her husband had just bought from my son. Daniel had forgotten one small thing. The house was never his to sell. My name is Margaret. I taught 4th grade in the same school district for 41 years. I raised one son, Daniel, by myself after his father walked out in 1987. Daniel was 4. I remember because he was holding a plastic dinosaur when the door closed. He asked me if Daddy went to the store. I said yes. I do not know why I said yes. I just did. For the next 20 years, I worked 3 jobs. Days I taught. Evenings I graded papers and tutored neighborhood kids for cash. Weekends I cleaned offices downtown with a woman named Lorraine who smoked menthols and called me sweetheart. I paid for Daniel's braces in cash. I paid for his SAT prep in cash. I paid for his law school in cash in envelopes I handed to the registrar so the deposit slip would not bounce. I never took a vacation. Not one. Daniel went on a class trip to Washington in 10th grade. I sold my mother's pearl earrings to send him. He came back with a souvenir keychain shaped like the Capitol. I still have it in a drawer somewhere. I think. The house on Maple Street was my whole life. I bought it in 1978 before Daniel was born, with money from my father's small life insurance policy. Craftsman style. A front porch with a swing that always creaked on the left side. Wood floors that needed mopping twice a week because of the dust from the elm out front. I knew every sound in that house. I knew which stair groaned, the third from the top. I knew which window stuck in July. Daniel grew up tall and quiet. People used to tell me he had old eyes. I thought that was a compliment. Now I am not sure. He married a woman named Vanessa in 2009. She was a real estate agent with very white teeth and a way of looking at a room as if she was already pricing it. The first time she came to dinner, she asked me what year the house was built. I told her. She nodded slowly and said, "Original hardwood, that is rare." I laughed. I thought she was being polite. I made pot roast. She ate 2 bites. Daniel's first marriage had ended badly, years before Vanessa. There was a settlement, an apartment lost, a car repossessed. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with him at 2 in the morning, watching him hold his head in his hands. He said he had nothing left. I told him he had me. He did not look up. That was when I called my lawyer, quietly, without telling Daniel. I moved the deed of the house into an irrevocable trust. I named my late brother's daughter, Catherine, as co-trustee. Catherine was a paralegal in Albany. She had a steady voice and a way of writing everything down twice. I trusted her more than I trusted myself some days. I did it because I had seen too many of my friends lose their homes to grown children's bad marriages and bad business ideas. I did not tell Daniel. I told myself it was protection, not suspicion. I told myself I was being careful. Maybe I was being something else. I am still not sure what. For 12 years, nothing happened. Daniel married Vanessa. They moved into a brick colonial in a new development with a 3-car garage. They had no children. Vanessa redecorated 3 times in 5 years. I sent birthday cards. I made Thanksgiving dinner. Daniel came over once a month and ate quickly and looked at his phone. Last spring in April, I had a stroke. A mild one, the doctors said. I was making coffee when it happened. I remember the kettle whistling and not being able to turn my head. I remember the smell of the coffee burning. They tell me I called 911 myself. I do not remember that part. I spent 6 weeks in the rehab wing of St. Vincent's, learning to swallow, learning to button a blouse with one good hand. The therapist was a young woman named Priya, who said, "Good job, Margaret," in the same warm voice every morning, even when I dropped the plastic cup again. I cried twice. Once when I could not say the word fork. Once when I could. Daniel came on the first Sunday. He brought tulips wrapped in plastic from the grocery store. He sat in the chair by the window and asked the nurse if the stroke had affected my memory. I was right there. He asked her, not me. I noticed, but I did not say anything. I was tired. Vanessa came once. She brought a card with a watercolor of a robin on it. She signed it Love V. She stayed 11 minutes. I counted because the clock on the wall was the only thing I could focus on without my eyes swimming. After that, Daniel called the front desk more than he called me. He had questions about my paperwork. He had questions about my insurance. The nurses told me later he had asked them if I seemed confused. He had asked them if I knew the date. He had asked them if I recognized him every time. I knew the date. I always knew the date. I am a teacher. We know dates. A week before I was discharged, a woman knocked on the door of my house. I was not there, of course. My neighbor Eleanor was there, watering my African violets. The woman was holding a folder and a measuring tape. She asked Eleanor if she was the new owner. Eleanor said, "New owner of what?" The woman looked at her notes and said, "The Craftsman, the one that just sold." Eleanor called me that night from the hospital lobby. She kept her voice very even. She said, "Margaret, I think you should call your lawyer." I did not call my lawyer first. I called Catherine. I told her what Eleanor had said. There was a long silence on the line. Then Catherine said, "Aunt Margaret, that house is in the trust. He cannot sell it." I said, "I know." She said, "Then what did he sell?" I said, "I do not know yet." She drove down from Albany the next morning. She brought a thick folder of paperwork and a thermos of coffee. We sat in the rehab day room and she spread the documents on a cafeteria table. She showed me the trust paperwork, my signature, her signature, the notary stamp from June of 2013, 12 years old and still binding. Then she showed me what Daniel had filed, a power of attorney, dated 3 weeks ago, with a signature that was supposed to be mine. It was not mine. The M was wrong. I have written my own name 500,000 times in red pen on the top of a child's spelling test. I know what the M looks like. The loops were wrong. The slant was wrong. It was a stranger's idea of my hand. Catherine looked at me. She said, "Do you want to sit with this for a day?" I said no. I said, "Call your friend at the Bar Association." She nodded once and put the papers back in the folder. I want to say I cried. I want to say I felt something dramatic. The truth is, I felt a very quiet kind of cold, like when you open the freezer and forget what you came for. I went back to my room and ate the green Jell-O. It was the only thing on the tray I could pick up without help. The next day, Daniel called. He sounded cheerful. He asked how my therapy was going. I said fine. He said he wanted to talk to me about something practical when I got home. I said, "What kind of practical?" He said, "The house is a lot for you now, Mom." I said, "Is it?" He said, "Vanessa and I have been thinking." I said, "I am sure you have." There was a pause. He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Nothing, dear. The nurse is here." And I hung up. I went home 4 days later. Eleanor picked me up because Daniel said he had a deposition. Eleanor drove with both hands on the wheel and did not ask me any questions. When we pulled up to the house, there was a small sign in the yard. It said sale pending. I asked Eleanor to pull it out of the ground and put it in the trash. She did. She did not say a word. She is a very good neighbor. The first thing I did inside the house was sit on the swing on the front porch. The left chain still creaked. The elm out front was just starting to bud. A squirrel was on the railing eating something it should not have been eating. I sat there for an hour. Then I went inside and called a locksmith. He came that afternoon. A young man named Thomas with grease on his knuckles. He changed every lock on the doors and put new bolts on the basement windows. He charged me $460. I paid him in cash from the coffee can in the kitchen, the one I have kept since 1988. Daniel used to call it my pirate money when he was small. He thought it was funny then. After Thomas left, I sat at the kitchen table with Catherine's folder. I made 1 copy of the trust paperwork and 1 copy of the forged power of attorney. I put them in a manila envelope. I addressed it to Daniel at his law firm. I did not write a letter. I did not write a note. I just put the documents inside and dropped it in the blue mailbox at the corner of Maple and 6th on my way to the grocery store. He called me 11 times that evening. I did not answer. The next morning, a young woman from his firm called my landline. She said Daniel needed to speak with me urgently. I told her my son did not have my permission to be contacted through her. I asked her to take me off whatever list I was on. She apologized 3 times. I could hear someone breathing behind her on the call. I hung up. The sale collapsed within a week. The buyers, a couple from Ohio, were furious. Their lawyer was furious. Vanessa's broker was furious. Vanessa was furious in a very particular way she has, where her voice gets very small and very high at the same time. I know this because she left 2 voicemails. I deleted them without finishing either one. Catherine's friend at the Bar Association did her job quietly and well. The complaint was filed in late June. Daniel was suspended pending review in August. His firm asked him to take leave. Vanessa's brokerage opened its own internal inquiry into how she had listed a property she did not legally represent. I learned all of this from Eleanor, who reads the legal notices in the local paper because her late husband was a lawyer, and she never stopped. Daniel came to the house once, a Tuesday in September. He stood on the porch and rang the bell. I did not open the door. I watched him through the side window. He looked smaller than I remembered. His tie was loose. He had not shaved. He held a bouquet of yellow daisies in plastic, the kind they sell at the gas station. He stood there for 9 minutes. Then he put the daisies on the swing and walked back to his car. I waited until I heard the engine pull away. Then I went out and picked up the daisies. I put them in a glass jar of water in the kitchen. They lasted 3 days. I threw them out on a Thursday. I am not sure why I kept them at all. Maybe I wanted to see if I would. Vanessa filed for divorce in November. I heard about it from Catherine, who heard about it from her friend at the bar. She said Vanessa was claiming Daniel had hidden assets and engaged in fraud. Catherine said, "The irony is loud." I did not laugh. I made a cup of tea and watched the elm lose the last of its leaves. Daniel sent me a letter at Christmas. Handwritten, 4 pages, on yellow legal pad paper. I recognized his real handwriting this time. He apologized. He said he had been desperate. He said the firm had been pressuring him about billable hours. He said Vanessa had been pressuring him about money. He said he had thought the stroke was worse than it was. He said he had thought I would never know. I read the letter twice. I put it in the drawer with the capital keychain. I did not write back. People ask me sometimes if I am angry. I tell them no. Anger is loud. What I have is something else. A kind of stillness. Like the house after a child has finally moved out and you realize how quiet a hallway can be. I taught for 41 years. I know the sound of a room when the children have gone home. This is that sound. Only it does not end at 3 o'clock. I still make coffee every morning in the same kettle. I still hear the 3rd stair from the top groan when I come down. The window in the upstairs bedroom still sticks in July. The swing on the porch still creaks on the left side. I sit on it some evenings and watch the squirrels. I think about Daniel as a boy holding the plastic dinosaur. I think about him asking if Daddy went to the store. I think about the 4th grade spelling tests with my red M at the top. I think about the woman with the fabric swatch on my porch, asking when she could measure for curtains. I think about how she smiled, apologetic, like she had done something wrong by knocking. She had not done anything wrong. She just had the wrong address. Or maybe the wrong son. The house is still mine. The deed is still in the trust. Catherine calls every Sunday at 4. Eleanor comes over for tea on Wednesdays. Daniel has not called since the letter. I do not know where he is living. I do not ask. Sometimes at night I sit at the kitchen table with the coffee can in front of me, the one he used to call my pirate money. I take the lid off and look inside. There is still cash in there. Crumpled 10s, a few 20s, a folded 50 from 1996 that I never spent because I liked the way it looked. I do not need the money. I just like to know it is there. I close the lid. I put it back on the shelf. I turn off the kitchen light. I go upstairs. The third stair groans. The window sticks. The house breathes the way it has breathed for 48 years. It is mine. It was always mine. And so, I suppose, is the silence.